So turn that button on called microphone. Working on it, guys, so you can hear me. Really apologise about that. Sorry, Jim, if you can hear me in the background. Just working on the. Hey guys, how are you? Can you hear me now? Let me know if you can hear me. Just throw a comment back over the top there. I really apologise. I did have it open at the start. Yes, you guys can hear me. Awesome. We're back in action here. So welcome to the next LinkedIn Live episode of Think Beginning Not End. Got an awesome guest for you lined up today. Real big surprise for you. I've all done the promos on it. So it's Jim Appleby from Downer Group. We're going to be discussing all things using recycled plastic in roads. Guys, now, just very quickly, at the start I mentioned that LinkedIn Live is still in the testing phase. Please bear with me with any technical problems like we've already had. And if you see me looking this way, it's because I am engaging you guys over here in the comments. I'm not ignoring Jim, our guest. I'm trying to engage you guys and make sure if you've got any questions, you can get them over to Jim and we can answer them through today's session. So I'm going to bring Jim in on the broadcast right now. So just wait as I add Jim in here, and I'll make sure I get this right, because there's been a few times I haven't got it right. And without much further ado, I want to welcome Jim Appleby from Downer. He's the man behind, or one of the great people behind Reconaphalt. Thank you so much for jumping on to live today, Jim. Great to have you on board.
Simon, absolute pleasure to be here. I can hear you loud and clear, by the way.
Oh, beautiful. I'm probably talking too loud now. Okay, guys. So, Tim, tell us a little bit about yourself to start with and your journey to get to where you are now. You head up the Reconomy. You're the General Manager of Reconomy for Downer. So if you can give our audience who don't know you, there's plenty of us that do know you. You're a well-known industry figure, very respected. So, Jim, if you can give us a bit of background on yourself and where you've got to where you are now.
Yeah, sure, Simon, and good afternoon, everybody. So I've been a road builder since I was 16, which was just after Fred Flintstone finished. So for nearly 35 years, I've been in the industry. So man and boy, having started in a paving crew, came all the way through a road building business. And for the last 10 of those, I've been lucky enough to work here in Australia for Downer. The first 6, I worked in the asphalt business and ended up heading up the national asphalt business. And for the last 4, we took a bit of a pivot in Downer, and we saw the importance of recycling and the circular economy. And I've moved into a role to help develop our footprint and further our activities in that zone.
The Reconaphalt product, for those that don't know, but many people, just think it's a matter of throwing a whole bunch of plastic in there and mixing it up with some tar and asphalt and off you go. But, I know that there's been a lot of research that goes into these products. There's been a really long lead time. How long has the project been running for, and where did it all start?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. It's been an evolution. So recycling's been around in asphalt for many, many years, and we've been continually evolving. 5 years ago, believe it or not 3 kilometres from here in Maclear Park, we laid a 99% recycled asphalt, which was the first of its kind anywhere in the world. So the recycling journey has got longevity. We really got our teeth into it as we saw the evolution of China starting to slow down. This is 2 years before it was announced. And we started to look through our extensive R&D team. And I've got to be honest, we are blessed with some of the finest minds in research and development to start and look at how our product portfolio could evolve to meet the needs of society. So, we've seen a lot of activity over the last 2 years, and I can go back firmly with just the Reconaphalt journey 3 years before that, when we started to do the groundwork and the investigation to make sure that we could find products and we could develop a portfolio of recycled materials.
And Jim, the journey to find how you can use plastic in a road, where does that start? And for those people out there that don't know, but you know, plastic is obviously oil derived, and oil or tar, you know, comes from a similar place. So that journey start, and I know it's just plastic that you're putting into the roads in terms of recycled content.
Yeah, so a couple of things. We all talk about tar. The key constituent of any asphalt-based road is bitumen. And bitumen is that oil-derived product everybody talks about. It's actually what makes a road black. So bitumen, you add stone, and then you mix it all together in a really controlled process, and you end up with asphalt. Bitumen comes in many different forms, and you have the road you want to build. Where plastic sits in all that, and remember, Reconaphalt's got other ingredients as well, but specifically plastic's one of the most amazing materials the world has ever invented. If you can get past duct tape and cable ties, it's clearly up there at number 3. And plastic is a polymer, and polymer have huge benefits to many materials, and bitumen is not dissimilar. So by using certain plastics in certain ways, you gain a polymerized benefit to your asphalt. So you make a better asphalt. So that was pretty much where we started. And it was about finding the right plastic, which could produce the right outcomes and the right environmental benefits, which is equally as important, to produce a really high value asphalt. I think that's the easiest way to describe it.
So, Jim, you know, performance criteria of that particular polymer is really, because when you start to look at a road and the performance of that road, there are so many different elements that we need a road to perform in a certain way, right? So, understanding having a quality product and how that relates to the performance of a product over a long time is a really, really important part of the research that you've obviously got to do.
Yeah. Absolutely, and this is one of the benefits. As I say, having such an extensive R&D team, you know, we've been looking through, the catalogue of materials for years. You know, you're looking for materials which, you know, an asphalt road's got to be flexible. It can't be rigid. It can't be solid, otherwise it would break. It can't be too flexible, otherwise it will rot. So what you're looking for is this performance from a road that gives you longevity. So the asset lasts as long as possible. And that's what's really important. You know, you can't put an asphalt down, go in and dig it up a week later. You've actually got it in there 20-year, 40-year design lives so that you get your value from the asset. Remember, roads are Australia's single biggest investment out of everything. So, you know, you've got to give your clients a long-lasting road. And by using certain additives, you can adjust the properties of the material, of the asphalt, to get a better outcome. And Reconaphalt gives us that.
And Jim, would you say, like, globally, Australia has some of the toughest conditions to build a road in? I mean, we have the extreme of well over 40, and in places like the Northern Territory and Northern Western Australia, where we see those temperatures north of 40. And then we've got other parts in Australia where the temperature can be well below 0. Would you say that's some of the most challenging conditions to design and build a long life product like the roads you're building here in Australia, that it is difficult?
Yeah, because I mean, Australia is the size of most continents, so you do see, you know, climatic conditions and, you know, road conditions change. For example, heavier vehicles, quads, truck and dogs, you've got all this whole range of axle weights changing. So you have to adapt the material for the circumstance you want to use it. You know, asphalt's been around a long time, longer than me, as you know. I mentioned earlier, I've been around in it a long time myself. But you know, you can adapt it, and that's why engineers are so important. You know, the engineers adapt the material, and this is client-side engineers as well as contracting engineers, to be able to meet the needs of what they want. So to be able to deal with the specific circumstances they face every day.
Yep. Jim, I'm just going to take a quick moment just to acknowledge some of our audience here on LinkedIn. Just very quickly, Jim, I just want to say thank you to Mark Stephen, to Penny Stammers. We've got Ravi here, Gerald Beckton. I've got a couple of questions in a second as well. We've got Melanie Gordon. We've got Yuvad. We've got the guys from, and I will get to a couple of questions here very quickly on this, Jim. Just a really quick one here. Ravi's got a couple of questions. We'll get to at the end, Ravi, by the way. They're really important questions. And another great question from Amanda at the end. I'll get to that as well, which is related to bitumen being used in another product. But I want to stay focused on Reconaphalt. Jim, I've had the luxury to speak many times, and one of the things I hear you talk about is to build a great product, you need great partners. And I know that's something that you're very big on, is great partnerships. Can you tell us a little bit about the backstory of the partners that have been involved, Phil, and just enlighten everyone, you know, what it takes to build a good partnership to build a product like you have at Downer?
Yeah, sure. We've now found in waste recovery, resource recovery and reuse is such a big subject. You need to have a chain of partners who are all interested in the same subject. We're lucky enough to have some incredibly close relationships where we have a really trusted environment to develop products, not least with Close the Loop. Close the Loop have worked with us all the way through a journey over almost 10 years where we developed toner pave together, where we developed an asphalt that used the powder that's left in a toner cartridge out of a printer, for example. And that relationship was born around that product, which is now developed into Close the Loop developing the toner plus ingredient, which is really important in the Reconaphalt journey. But then there's also the supply chain of collection. So we have Red Cycle, we have the plastic place, who provide the source product for the soft plastics we use on that journey. We also have relationships with the likes of Suez, Re-purposing, who provide glass. So all of these ingredients that are no longer virgin-based have to come from somewhere. So it's about creating that supply chain. And actually, more importantly than just the supply chain is the community. Because I can assure you, nobody has all of the answers in what we're doing anyway. Or if anybody has, give me a call offline. But you know, you have to have that community effort to bring that expertise to the table to get something which is, you know, looks like that or looks like that and get it into that.
Yes.
So, you know, our partners are incredibly important.
And Jim, just explaining the toner plus part of that for the everyday viewer out there, that's part of the recycling program related to ink cartridge, right? So that's a byproduct of cartridges in our printer, and it goes into the roads. Can you give that a bit of detail for everyone?
Absolutely. So a lot of people think it's carbon black that's in a photocopier, but it's not. It's actually a really fine, high-grade polymer. And the polymer, we found it has characteristics which really suit and really add value to the bitumen and the asphalt performance. And, you know, 10 years ago, Steve Morris and the team out there, Close the Loop, came together with the guys out at Downer and found there was a really successful way to bring that into the mix to add value. So as I say, Reconaphalt's a 3-year journey with 2 years behind the scenes. You know, the journey alone for the toner pave started nearly 10 years ago.
Wow. And Jim, the other products that you showed one just before is obviously the use of recycled glass in the product as well.
Yeah, I think, you know, Reconaphalt's caught a lot of people's imagination because plastics are really en vogue at the moment. But you don't have to look far around Australia. You don't have to even go beyond the city I'm sat in to understand the scale of the issues around glass stockpiling. You know, glass in terms of sheer weight and numbers in tons is a bigger issue than soft plastics. The that needs to be used. And,
Yep.
you know, it's glass. If you'd have looked at this before it became this glass bottle, well, you know, I'll just give them a quick one, then it was sand. So it's gone the full cycle, and we use it as a sand replacement. So rather than travel sand over 200 kilometers to help it add value to an asphalt, we actually using locally produced glass to supplement and to exchange for sand. So it's part of the journey. Under really strict controls, it's got to be clean, it's got to be detritus free. But you know, it's about putting the product back to use where it adds the most value.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about the product, Jim, you and I have spoken about this before, and you've got a great story about how Christmas turkeys can be related to the very product you've been talking about today. We've had a laugh about it, but I actually have used this plenty of times talking to people that I'll often say, you got to go and speak to Jim at Downer and ask him about Christmas turkeys. So, you know, when we're talking about a quality product, I'm hoping you can share this little story with everyone so they understand the thinking behind what it takes to make a quality product.
Yeah, and it starts because, as usual in my quirky ways and that odd little accent I've got, I've never been out and bought a Christmas chicken. So come December, and I'm thinking about my Christmas lunch, and you can see by the size of me, I think about it a lot. You know, I've never thought about going out and buying a Christmas chicken because I want a Christmas turkey. And the reason I want a Christmas turkey is I'm the customer, and that's what I'm going to use. And what I've found through the whole waste community, the resource recovery community, people try and sell you a Christmas chicken. And I don't want a chicken, I want a turkey. So the key to waste being used as a commodity is to turn it into the commodity that people want to buy. And that's my story. And I'm sure that makes no sense to anybody other than me and you, and maybe Pete Tamblin if he's listening. But, you know, the reality is you've got to give people what they want, and you've got to give them the right thing in the right quality, or people won't buy it. And I've got to be perfectly frank, I don't blame them. So I take numerous calls telling me they've got this great ingredient that I can put in my asphalt, but it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, we're not going to put it in there, because ultimately we've got to give our clients exactly what they want. And indeed, I think when you're talking recycled, you've got to give them a little bit more, because the client needs a comfort blanket. So please stop trying to sell me Christmas chickens.
Well, I'll definitely be inviting you around for a Christmas turkey this year, Jim. No, I think, look, you're dead right. A lot of people don't understand quality product like that. And certainly when it comes to plastic, everyone thinks it's valuable, but it's only valuable when it's in the format that a particular manufacturer can use it. And whether that's an injection molded product, it has to meet a certain performance criteria. And that's really, really important for everyone to understand. And that's why, you know, segregation at source and collecting is great and needs to be done, but we also need to follow that up as well with making sure that the companies who can use these products are using them and we support them in using them. But Jim, what about the people that ask about the microplastics and how microplastics can leak from the road into the ocean? You know, there's a few people that make comments like that about these roads, and you know, I know the backstory behind it, but, you know, can you elaborate on that a little bit for people so they understand the kind of testing that goes into a product like Reconaphalt and that this doesn't happen?
Yeah, and this is one of the most asked questions. I think it's really interesting. A lot of people believe that we just put plastic in roads. So we put little shreds of plastic in this asphalt here, and it just sits there. The process is far more complex to that, to make sure we don't have shreds of plastic in the asphalt. The easiest way to describe it, because I'm sure we've got a mixture of people on the line, is imagine a hot cup of coffee. It's the easiest way to imagine it. So you've got your coffee, you know, you've got your fancy coffee machine, you put it in there, the water and the coffee are together nice and hot, and you want to make it sweet, so you add sugar. So you put the sugar in, you give it a stir, and lo and behold, the sugar disappears. It's because the sugar becomes part of a homogeneous mass. You no longer have coffee, sugar, and water. You actually have sweet coffee. And that's how we look at it. I can't be over prescriptive about, we use what we think is the right plastic to achieve the purpose. So we create one homogeneous mass, with the plastic being part of the bitumen because of that coffee sugar thing. So it coats. So there are not pieces of plastic in the asphalt. In terms of testing, I've worked on 3 continents, and the most rigorous testing, and this is a credit to them, far from a criticism, is New South Wales EPA for a resource recovery license. I was sitting thinking about this earlier, but yep. I reckon in my career I've touched nearly 100 million tons of asphalt, and Reconaphalt is the most tested asphalt product I have ever produced. Excuse me. So it's been tested on 3 continents. It's been tested heavily in Europe, and it's been tested specifically for microplastics BPA content. You would be shocked if I told you the BPA content of that asphalt is less than the water you drink out of a water bottle. So we use the right ingredients, we use the right process, we have the science behind it and the process control to ensure it. So we don't end up with a microplastic-based product running through our asphalt at all. Some of the testing has been incredible. You know, testing materials at 70 degrees to replicate global warming, and materials of pH 4 acidic value to replicate acid rain. And, you know, we don't have that leaching issue. It's, you know, safer than normal asphalt.
And Jim, to add to that, the product is recyclable as well. Like, you know, I've heard you talk about that. You know, you can pull this up and reuse it again and again.
Yeah, I have the joys of working with Dante Cremasco, our EGM, and when we started this journey, in fact, he started it years before we ever came up with the Reconaphalt. He was the guy who worked on the development of the 99% recycled in McLean Park. He was absolutely adamant that this material will have no negative legacy and will be 100% recyclable. He says this is a product forever, not just for Christmas. And what we've created here is an asphalt which, when you dig the road up in 20, 30 years, however long it lasts, then that whole product can be reused in the road building procedure. It will make another asphalt. So what we would say, that's perpetually recyclable. It's gone back into the circular economy and it stays there for bloody good.
And Jim, I'm going to get to a couple of questions if I can. Josh has got a good question here. He's got a. I'll start with his other question. Was that VB in that coffee cup? And I think I know the answer to that. So Josh will kick that one to the side. But he's got a good question. Do you know how many kilometres of you've laid in Australia so far of this particular road, Jim?
Because depths vary. Because depths vary, we've laid over 80,000 tons of it. Over 50 million items of plastic. Over I think it's nearly 20 or 12 million VB bottles. And I've got to be honest, Josh, I would never drink VB. I had to borrow it off the neighbour. Yeah. So the thing about the road network, if you think about just think about a car parking bay in Coles supermarket or Woolworths, whatever your bias is. That one bay, if you resurface that bay this thick, so say 40 mil thick, would use 800 of these. It would use 252 to be precise, scale, because the roads are so vast of what you can actually do.
And Jim, another great question that I've got here. Sorry, it's just popped off my screen. I'll just bring it back up now, guys. Are you getting enough support from government? And I know everyone talks about this, but are you getting enough support from government? And I don't mean support for product because that's there, but I mean support for buying more of the product, because recycling's only recycling when we're actually using and buying recycled product.
And Simon, I'm glad you said that. Are we getting enough support? In parts from some, knowing the answer to others. You know, we have made the commitments through government at various levels about what we're going to do about the stockpiles of, let's call it commodity, because a lot of things that are stockpiled in this country are not what I would deem a waste. And the only way to use them is to give them a route to market. South Australia, I've got to take hats off to them. They've embraced it better than anybody. New South Wales, now the resource recovery license is in place. Again, have that ability to embrace it, as does every other jurisdiction. But the reality is, it's only a pipe dream. Reconaphalt's a great idea, a great concept, a great material. It performs better than another one, but it ain't no good if it's not being made and put on roads.
And so, Jim, what do you think the answer is here? I know it's easy for you and I to say, hey, buy more. What are the answers be, or are they already there? And it is just really that simple. We need to start buying it and getting laying at this road.
I'm glad you corrected that. I wasn't quite sure where you were going there. I think there's some really important stuff. You know, engineers are incredibly valuable and are the custodians of all we do, because what they make sure are things are fit for purpose, are right, are going to last how long they say they will, and they do all the checks and balances and the applied science to make sure that's the case. The last thing any of us want to do is rush in and cause chaos. It wouldn't do anybody any good. So engineers have to be those custodians. What we have got to do is give them confidence those materials perform. And when the new materials, you could understand there's a little bit of, I'm not sure, let's just take steps at a time. But what we've done, we've built data. Now we've got accelerated testing. We've got product that's been down on the road. You know, it's just over 2 years since the first trial went down at Rayburn Avenue in Craigieburn. I went out there last week. It looks better than it did on the day we laid it. You know, we're now building that confidence. And what we want to start do is embrace that confidence and start and widen its use. But, you know, nobody's expecting engineers to go out there and put the you-know-what's on the chopping block. There's plenty of data to support recycled content. You know, we've been using recycled content for many years, well over 10. It's just about, I think you've got to have the will to change. And our, you know, the political parts of government have got to give us more will to change and you know, embrace people who will innovate rather than be cautious of them.
Yeah, I think when I talk to a lot of our customers, Jim, they all do the same thing, whether it's the guys making pipes or whatever the product is, an injection molded bar chair that's used in concrete. It is definitely breaking down that barrier. And I come back to that point you said at the start, Jim, about when you've got a product made from recycled, you've got to deliver that little bit extra to try and break through some of these barriers or misconceptions about the performance of these products.
Yeah, you know, I think when you put a recycled option forward, everybody thinks two things. It doesn't perform as well and it should be cheaper. Now, recycled is just reusing other people's commodities. To reuse them properly, you've got to enhance them. So if you think about the journey of a waste in a commingled bin, you don't take it from the bin and throw it in a ton of asphalt or try and put it in concrete. You actually take it on a re-engineering journey. And this is the thing, recycled doesn't always mean it's cheaper. What we always endeavour to do is to produce a higher performing recycled material for the same price, because that re-engineering phase is complex and it's expensive. But, you know, we can do it. And the more people adopt it, you know, the more wide scale it becomes, then of course you get the benefits of mass production. So I just think, you know, recycle gets tagged as cheap and nasty, and it couldn't be further from the truth. You can't tell me the glass that's even in a VB bottle is not as good a quality as the sand that was originally made for after it's been through a 2,000-degree furnace. You just have to take it back to an engineering state. And that's my job in Downer. My job is to find source material, re-engineer it, remanufacture it into a commodity that adds value into the services we offer.
And Jim, what are some of the exciting things that you've learned along the way that perhaps you didn't know at the start? Is there any key things that stand out, that you could share with everyone about your journey and the journey of the product that you work with your partners on? Is there any one or two things that really stand out as an exciting highlight along the way?
I think learning to understand the regulatory authorities and their needs has been really valuable, and just how lucky we are in Australia to have such a level of diligence about what we do. Whilst frustrating at times, when you've been through that, you actually understand, bloody hell, we are lucky. Nobody's out there, letting the wrong thing happen. There's some fabulous work happens. Also, the other thing is that the one thing more than anything is that if we don't change, we will suffer, because the public are no longer in a position where they think it's a nice to have. They actually think doing the right thing, hence all the questions about the microplastics, and the rightly asked ones, doing the right thing is bloody important. And, we know lots about asphalt, we know lots about our products, we know lots about performance. But when we've overlaid those, we now understand of what we can really do as a company and as a sector, more importantly, to help society change how it wants to. Because I can tell you now, I've got two little people running around in the front here, trying the best to TikTok the way through, distracting me. If we don't change, they will change us.
Absolutely, Jim. I couldn't agree more. Having young kids myself, it's up to us to set an example of the standards and where we need to go in the future. Jim, I've got another question over here that I'm going to jump to very quickly. It's from Mark Yates. He'd love to hear our comments on companies using bumper bars and even takeaway coffee cups in asphalt mixers. Are these just above ground landfills?
I think what I'm seeing in the sector is some good activity, and it very much comes back to, is it adding value to what you do? My view is, and that of Downer, is we're not just going to put things in asphalt to get rid of it, or put it in concrete, or put it in road base. What we're going to do is we're going to put a product in which either directly replaces a performing product, so glass for sand, or adds value to it. Lots of people are on lots of different journeys. It's hard to say for me which ones are right or wrong. I've not been involved in the science behind some of those. But what I am convinced is I know ours works and does deliver. And, I don't think anybody is out there just trying to get rid of a problem. I think they're trying to solve a problem and create a solution likewise. It's really difficult. There's a lot of diversity. I hear lots of different people doing lots of different things. What I always say is trust the science and trust the regulator, and make sure you've got the both aligned, and you'll be good.
So a really big step, like we've got a great product like yours that's recently been certified, I think, from the EPA in New South Wales. Is that right? Yeah,
we have a resource recovery license for Reconaphalt, and as I say, work through some incredibly diligent processes in order to ensure that leachate isn't a problem, and yes, and that's the highest bar we've had to cross, and it's certainly beyond anything I've faced before. So yeah, we're delighted to have it, and have worked with the EPA in New South Wales to achieve that.
So now we really get our local authorities, governments, councils and even residents asking for these roads to be put down and get them out there, because it does solve a really big problem. We're collecting a lot of soft plastic Australia-wide, and if we don't start using it in products, we're going to start ending up with stockpiles of things again, and we need to make sure that we've got this pull through, because as we said at the start, it's only recycling when we're buying recycled content. And really appreciate you sharing some of that with us, Jim. Do you want to add in closing, either on Reconaphalt, the work Dan is doing? Is there anything exciting in the future you can give us a little glimpse into, Jim, at all?
I think Reconaphalt's really, really cool. And why it's really cool is Reconaphalt's just the brand. And after every Reconaphalt, you'll find three numbers. The percentage of recycled material. So this famously is the block that Scott Morrison held up when he visited us last August. So this is Reconaphalt 886. 8 recycled materials, 86% of recycled content. And it performs better than an original asphalt, And that's the thing. Recycling isn't about compromise. It's actually about betterment. And anybody who stands back, and I put myself in the shoes of my little 10-year-old Crusader Ruby or 12-year-old Grace. If I don't mention them, they don't talk to me all night, by the way. So, they're going to look back in 20 years' time and go, so you had all this really cool plastic, you had all this really cool glass, you had all this stuff out of printer cartridges, which is really expensive, and you threw it in a hole. They think we're bloody crackers. And that's what we've got to get to. We've got to start challenging the status quo, giving our clients high-value, long-lasting products that they can have confidence in. And I think we'll see that sea change come around. I think it's a really exciting time. But as you said, the reality is, if it isn't going to be bought, it isn't going to be made. And if it isn't going to be made, then it's going to be stockpiled or it's going to be landfilled, because they're the only other options. So I'd encourage everybody to start and think beyond the parameters of what's always been and start moving to the parameters of what's really possible.
Yeah, it's a great note to finish on, Jim. I'm just going to take a quick moment and acknowledge some of our viewers here on LinkedIn, and I'll get across to Facebook very quickly. But again, we've got Theodore Steeman, who's joined. We've got the guys at Mender. We've got Peter, Mark Yates. Josh is obviously on here. Samantha Cross from the Plastic Police. You mentioned the Plastic Police. You and I both know Samantha well. She's on here. She's thrown some great comments in here, like pulling products, not. So that's great to see. And plenty of people like your analogies, Jim, as I thought that they would. I'll very quickly just jump across to Facebook before we finish off, because I do know there are a couple of people over there. Got Dale from our UK team on here. He's asked a couple of questions. I'm just going to repeat the question very quickly. I think we've covered it anyway, Jim. Dale wanted to know, what is the lifespan, and can it be laid the same way the road networks lay current asphalts? Now, I think I know the answer to this, but just for Dale over on Facebook, could you quickly answer that one for us, Jim?
Yeah, the lifespan is comparable to the virgin equivalent. So in most cases in Australia, you look for a 20 to 30 year lifespan. It outperforms its equivalent material. So, if your material is designed to last 20 years, we get a 15% improvement in fatigue life, which means it'll last about another 3 years beyond that. It's just like when you see it being laid, it looks like any other asphalt. Apart from the glass gives it just a little bit of sparkle, which is nice to have a bit of sparkle around you. But it's just laid like any other asphalt. It should be treated like an engineered material, laid properly, compacted properly. But you could lay it with your standard paving crew and equipment in the same way you would the virgin equivalent.
So there's no excuse to not start laying Reconaphalt all around this country right now, especially as the government's looking to stimulate our economy. Really big point to make is there are plenty of jobs to be had in recycling, but we just need people to start buying recycled products. And just a quick shout out, Pete Tamblin is watching, so thanks for watching as well, Pete. He just made a quick comment, nicely said him as I thought he might. Pete, I also know you're a really big part of this, so thank you everyone for tuning in. Jim, thank you so much for making your time available this afternoon. I know you've been extremely busy. You've got a big job, and it's an honour to have you on today. I hope everyone's enjoyed hearing you talk. I always do. You're straight to the point, no nonsense. You're passionate about being a more sustainable future, and you're the perfect person to have in that role for Downer, Jim.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. As I say, you'll find me on LinkedIn. If you've got any questions, I don't know what you call it, DM me or message me or whatever. But by all means, you know, and to be honest, a lot of people are working bloody hard to do the right thing. But as I say, we can all have the best of intentions. If nobody buys anything, then it counts for bugger all.
Absolutely. And so, guys, we're going to wrap up there. I'd like you to all just a big thank you for Jim for joining us today. Guys will be able to watch the replay over on my YouTube channel. So if you haven't checked that out, go over there, subscribe, turn notifications on, because when you do, you'll get a notification every time we do a live show. And again, I'll put the link for it up in my LinkedIn profile. So all you guys are going to do is click on my profile and look for Jim Appleby's live on LinkedIn via the YouTube channel, so you can watch it there. Please share this, guys. Really important conversation that we've had today with Jim. Hopefully that's debunked some of the myths around how plastic is used in roads, and you've had a great explanation on it. So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. This Thursday, we're back with our live series with John Lees, back on at 11 a.m. on Thursday, and then next Tuesday with another recycling or sustainability guest. I'll let you guys guess who that's going to be, and I'll let you guys know very shortly. But thank you so much all for tuning in today for our LinkedIn Live, whether you've tuned in on LinkedIn, the YouTube channel, Facebook, and see you guys next time. And thanks again, Jim, for joining us today. And thank you very much. See you soon.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.